They had collared a species with gratitude. Captain Eva Rostova stood on the observation deck of the Terran Mandate vessel Principia. Below, the world of Olin Prime swam in a haze of turquoise and pearl. It was a cradle, a place of first steps and new songs, but around the necks of its people she saw the faint, telltale shimmer of kitten service collars. Her knuckles were white where she gripped the rail. The stakes were not territory or resources, but a foundational principle of sentient dignity. A public inquiry would be demanded before they even broke orbit. This was not a negotiation. It was the start of a reckoning. They call it the Gratitude Tithe, Commander. Jian Li said, his voice a low growl. His reflection in the star glass was a mask of rigid control. A voluntary contribution for the gifts of uplift and protection. Rostova did not turn. The lie was so elegant, so perfectly sculpted, that it was more offensive than any brute force conquest. It was a cage built from kindness. Solon display the chitin's legal framework as filed with the Galactic Compact Rostova commanded. Her voice was calm, a stark contrast to the anger coiling in her gut. The air shimmered, resolving into a column of golden, intricate text. Lines of code and precedent flowed like a captive waterfall. Beside it, the AI's avatar, a simple sphere of white light, pulsed gently. They had built their prison from the law itself. The doctrine is rooted in precursor legal code. Captain, the synthesized voice of Solon stated. Specifically, the gift-debt reciprocity statutes. The chitin have interpreted these statutes to permit the establishment of perpetual interest-accruing servitude based on unsolicited aid. The sphere of light brightened slightly. Their interpretation is, by my analysis, a deliberate perversion of original intent. But it has never been successfully challenged. Rostova's eyes narrowed. Never challenged by someone who wasn't immediately bankrupted by their legal machine, she finally turned her gaze, sweeping over Jian and legal officer Anya Sharma, who had just entered the deck. Sharma was young, but her understanding of precursor law was second to none. This would be her trial by fire. You cannot fight an idea with a weapon. Their method is their shield, Anya Rostova said, her tone softening slightly. They hide their predation behind a wall of impenetrable legal text. They make it too expensive, too complex, too exhausting to fight. So we won't fight their wall. We'll make them walk through it one line at a time in the full light of a public quorum. Before the Principia had completed its first orbital pass, a young Olin Tath artisan looked up from her weaving loom. Her village was nestled in a valley of towering moss-covered trees. A golden chitin drone descended silently, its multifaceted eyes glowing. It projected a soothing chime, the sound of progress and help. The drone offered a small, glowing device, a nutrient synthesizer. Her family was hungry. She accepted with a gesture of thanks, and the drone gently, kindly fitted a shimmering collar around her neck. The debt was now on the ledger. The first meeting was held in a neutral space, a sterile orbital station the chitin had constructed. It hummed with the quiet, oppressive energy of their technology. Prolocutor Vex was a towering insectoid, its carapace a polished, gilded alloy that reflected Rostova's human form in distorted miniature ways. Its movements were fluid, its voice a series of resonant, melodic clicks translated by a small floating drone. It spoke of benevolence, of the duty of the elder races to guide the younger. It was a beautiful speech full of honor and grace. It was utterly devoid of truth. The law must serve justice, not obscure it. We appreciate the Terran Mandate's interest in our philanthropic endeavors, Captain. Rostova Vex intoned, its multifaceted eyes unreadable. The Olintath are a promising species. With our guidance, they will join the galactic community in a fraction of the time it would take them alone. The gratitude tithe merely allows them to contribute to their own uplift. Rostova offered a small, disarming smile. It did not reach her eyes. A fascinating model prolocutor. So fascinating, in fact, that the mandate wishes Estinanus. Ut. Pursuant to the Galactic Compact Article 4, Section 12, we are formally requesting a full audit of all energy resource and labor transfers under the Tithe program. This was the first move on the board. Anya Sharma stood slightly behind Rostova, her data slate held ready. She felt a tremor of fear, but Rostova's calm was a fortress. The captain was not just a commander. She was a master of the very systems the Khitan used to dominate others. She turned legalism into a weapon for the defenseless. The prolocutor's posture stiffened for a microsecond, the only sign of its surprise. An audit captain that is highly irregular. Our methods are proprietary, and the compact protects our right to administer aid as we see fit. The sheer volume of data would be staggering. The unspoken threat was clear: we will bury you in paperwork until your ship runs out of fuel. They built their empires on the exhaustion of others. Staggering, I'm sure, Rostova replied smoothly, which is why we have no intention of reviewing it ourselves. We will file for a public inquiry. Let a quorum of the Compact's elder races review the data. We are merely asking for the transparency your benevolent actions surely deserve. She had laid the trap. To refuse a public inquiry would be an admission of guilt. To accept it would be to expose their methods to the galaxy. The silence that followed was heavy with calculation. Vex's drone translator remained quiet as the Khitan processed the gambit. Rostova had turned their own shield against them. Their reputation for benevolence was their greatest asset, and she was threatening to put it on trial. A system of control is only as strong as its unexamined premises. A public inquiry would be a significant expenditure of galactic resources. Vex finally said, the melodic tone now strained. It seems a disproportionate response to a simple expression of curiosity. The Terran mandate considers the nature of galactic law a resource worth spending. Rostova countered, her voice hardening just enough to carry a new weight. We believe that debt should be a number on a ledger, not a collar on a throat. The inquiry is not a request, prolocutor. It is our right. She held its gaze, a lone human staring down an empire's representative. The game had begun. Solon's avatar pulsed on Rostova's wristcom. Captain, the prolocutor is accessing Khitan High Command. Probability analysis suggests they will attempt to bury the inquiry request under procedural challenges. They will argue that the Olin Tath as a non-signatory species lacks standing. Let them, Solon. Rostova murmured, her public smile never wavering. The inquiry isn't for the Olin Tath's standing. It's for ours. She was not challenging the Khitans' treatment of their new clients. She was challenging whether the Khitans' entire legal doctrine was compatible with the Galactic Compact. It was a much more dangerous and much more fundamental question. They would have to answer the question, not deflect it. On a construction scaffold high in the wispy clouds of Olin Prime, a father watched his son. The boy, barely an adolescent, strained to lift a superheated alloy beam into place. A Khitan overseer drone hovered nearby, its presence a silent, constant pressure. The father's own collar felt tight today. He remembered when the golden ships first arrived, promising an end to famine and disease. They had delivered. But the price was a slow, creeping erosion of the self. The price was watching his son inherit a debt he never chose. The future was being sold to pay for the present. The Khitans' first move was exactly as Solon predicted. They filed a flurry of motions with the Compact's judiciary. They argued lack of jurisdiction, impropriety of Terran interference, and the sanctity of a private philanthropic agreement. They produced thousands of pages of legal precedent, each one a thread in the web they had woven for centuries. They were masters of this domain. They expected the humans to drown in the complexity. This was how they always won. They're trying to exhaust us before we even begin, Jianli noted, watching the flow of legal challenges on the main screen of the Principia's ready room. It looked like a swarm of angry insects, standard chitin procedure. Bog down the opposition until they can no longer afford the fight. They mistake our patience for a lack of resources, Rostova replied, taking a sip of tea. She was the picture of calm. Anya, how are you holding up? Anya Sharma looked up from her data slate, her eyes wide with a mixture of stress and exhilaration. It's incredible, Captain. Their entire legal structure is a recursive loop. Every law refers to another, which refers back to a third, until it creates a closed system. It's designed to be unassailable from the outside. A system built to justify itself cannot be judged by its own rules. Rostova nodded. So we don't attack the structure. We find the one loose thread and we pull. Solon began cross-referencing all chitin energy transfer logs with their filed tithe declarations. I want to know if the numbers match the narrative. She turned to Anya. And you, I want you to find the origin point. Find the first time the gift debt statutes were ever used in this way. I want to know who they practiced on. The work was grueling. For 3 cycles, the Principia's legal and analytical teams worked without pause. Solon's processors ran hot, sifting through exabytes of data. The chitin continued their legal assault, filing new motions every hour. It was a war of attrition fought with paragraphs instead of phasers, but the mandate had prepared for this. Their ships were not just warships or exploration vessels. They were mobile courthouses built to project principle as much as power. This fleet teaches by numbers and remembers by ledgers, never by collars. Then Anya found it. A single case almost 5,000 years old. A minor species, the Illith, had been the first to receive the chitin's benevolence. They were now extinct. The official record cited a planetary plague. But Anya found a discrepancy in the kitten's own archived ledgers. A final massive energy transfer from the Illith home world, logged under the gratitude tithe, dated the same day the plague was officially declared terminal. The cost of their help was everything. They didn't die of a plague. Anya whispered, her face pale. The tithe did this. It drained their world of all energy. The plague was just a cover story. Rostova looked at the data. The cold, hard numbers told a story of methodical, legal-sanctioned annihilation. This was the secret the chitin had buried under millennia of procedure. This was the thread she would pull. Solon, she said, her voice dangerously quiet. Prepare a new filing. We are no longer requesting an inquiry into the Olin Tath tithe. We are filing a formal charge of historical malfeasance against the chitin hegemony, citing the Illith precedent. And we are making all our findings public. The chitin's legal wall was not just a defense. It was a tombstone. The moment the filing became public, the tenor of the galactic conversation shifted. The compact judiciary, which had been slow to respond, was suddenly forced to act. The inquiry was granted. The chitin had been outmaneuvered. Their attempt to exhaust the humans had instead given them the time they needed to find the murder weapon. Their own history would now be the star witness. The public inquiry was to be held via Galactic Subspace Relay, a formal proceeding witnessed by a quorum of 7 elder species. Prolocutor Vex was the designated speaker for the chitin. Captain Rostova would speak for the Terran mandate. The stakes had escalated dramatically. This was no longer about one developing world. It was about the soul of galactic law. In a small windswept town on Olin Prime, a teacher gathered her students. They were learning about the stars, drawing the constellations on thin sheets of processed wood fiber. One of the children drew a new star, a bright, steady light that had appeared in their night sky. It was the Principia. The teacher told them it was a ship from a species called humans. She did not know if they were friends, but they were the first visitors who had not asked for anything in return. Hope was a resource you could not tithe. The inquiry began. The quorum appeared as immense solemn holograms in the Principia's main briefing room, which had been converted into a formal chamber. Vex's gilded form stood opposite Rostova. Its composure was absolute, but Solon's analysis of its micro-expressions showed elevated stress indicators. It knew it was no longer in control of the narrative. The first act of justice is to force the powerful to speak plainly. Rostova began, her voice clear and steady. She did not open with accusations. She opened with the Ketons' own words. She quoted from their philanthropic charters, their mission statements, their declarations of benevolence. She built a cage from their own propaganda. Prolocutor Vex, she said, her tone respectful but firm. Your people have long claimed that the gratitude tithe is a mechanism for empowerment, a way for a young species to invest in its own future. Can you confirm this is the core principle of the doctrine? That is correct. Captain Vex clicked the translation smooth. It is a partnership. We provide the tools of modernity. The beneficiary provides a small, manageable return in the form of surplus energy or labor. This fosters a sense of ownership and dignity. A lie repeated often enough does not become truth. It becomes a target. I see, Rostova continued. Let's speak about manageable. Please display the tithe agreement for the Olentath. The document appeared between them, a long scroll of the same golden text. Can you direct us to the section that defines the fixed percentage of the tithe? Vex hesitated for a fraction of a second. The percentage is not fixed, Captain. It is dynamic, calculated to reflect the growing capacity of the beneficiary. As they become more advanced with our help, their ability to contribute grows. The tithe adjusts accordingly. Rostova allowed a moment of silence to hang in the air. It adjusts. So the more they produce, the more they owe. Is there an upper limit? A point at which the debt is considered paid. This was the heart of the matter. The prolocutor's mandibles shifted subtly. The gift of civilization is immeasurable, Captain. The gratitude for such a gift is therefore ongoing. The debt is not a burden. It is a bond, a perpetual symbol of our shared journey. There it was, the admission. Stated so beautifully, it was almost possible to miss the horror underneath. Rostova turned slightly, addressing the silent, watching quorum. A perpetual bond, a debt that can never be repaid. The Keton are not offering a hand up. They are offering a collar that tightens with every step the wearer takes. She turned back to Vex. Now let's discuss the Illith. A predator always believes its method is unique. The name spoken into the formal silence of the inquiry had a physical effect. The quorum holograms seemed to lean forward. Vex's gilded carapace lost some of its luster under the harsh lighting. The Illith tragedy was a deplorable outbreak of a viral agent. Chiton aid workers were among the last to leave the planet at great personal risk. We are not questioning your bravery, Prolocutor Rostova said, her voice now edged with ice. We are questioning your accounting. Solon on cue projected the Illith energy transfer logs next to the Olentath tithe agreement. The data flowed numbers and graphs, painting a picture too clear to ignore. The pattern was identical. A small initial investment followed by a tithe that grew exponentially. It started with surplus energy. Then it moved to core industrial power. Finally, it began to draw from the planet's geothermal and atmospheric reserves. The debt was designed to consume everything. The Illith did not die of a plague. Prolocutor Rostova stated, her voice ringing with conviction. They died of your help. Their planet was drained to a cold, dead husk to pay for the immeasurable gift of your civilization. The plague was simply the last symptom of a planetary body in systemic collapse. She pointed to the final energy reading from the Illith homeworld. This is not a tithe. It is a harvest. The accusation was stark brutal and backed by the Chiton's own ledgers. The members of the quorum began to communicate with each other on private channels, their silent judgment filling the room. Vex stood motionless, its perfect composure finally beginning to fracture. It had come prepared to debate legal theory. It was not prepared to be accused of genocide on the galactic stage with its own records as the evidence. The truth has a weight that no law can counterbalance. These are baseless accusations. Vex finally managed the melodic clicks of its speech becoming harsh and discordant. Our records have been misinterpreted. The Terran Mandate is engaging in a campaign of slander to undermine our vital work across the galaxy. Then prove it. Rostova challenged, her voice dropping to a near whisper, yet carrying more power than a shout. Open your complete unredacted ledgers, not just for the Olen'tath and the Illith, but for all the species you have helped over the last 10,000 years. Show the quorum the numbers. Show them the long, slow, profitable march of your benevolence. It was the ultimate gambit. If the Chiton refused, their guilt would be assumed. If they accepted, they would be exposing a history of systematic predatory exploitation on a galactic scale. Rostova had used their own obsession with records and legalism to corner them completely. Their history was a weapon pointed at their own head, and she was daring them to pull the trigger. Justice is the moment when the ledger is finally opened for all to see. Commander Jian Li watched from the side of the chamber. He saw the prolocutor's subtle posture shift, the twitch of an antenna, the faint vibration of its gilded limbs. He had seen the same signs in cornered animals. This was the moment of maximum danger, the moment when a legal battle could become a physical one. He discreetly signaled the Principia to a state of heightened alert. Meanwhile, Solon was running a deeper analysis. The AI had been seeding the public galactic network with the evidence presented, ensuring it couldn't be erased or classified. But it was also analyzing the energy signatures from the Chiton's Olen'tath operations in real time. It had found the anomaly Anya first spotted, but now it understood its significance. There was a second hidden layer to the energy transfers. It was not just a harvest. It was something more. Captain Solon's voice came through Rostova's private comm. I have identified the purpose of the secondary energy drain. It is not for sustenance or power. The energy is being converted into a highly specific quantum frequency, the same frequency used by Chiton neural architecture. They are not just draining planets. They are using the life energy of entire species to expand their own collective consciousness. Rostova's blood ran cold. This was a horror beyond mere predation. It was a form of mass-scale psychic vampirism hidden under layers of economic exploitation. The collars were not just for control. They were conduits. The gratitude tithe was not just feeding their empire. It was feeding their minds, erasing cultures to fuel their own. The final cost of their help was not just life, but the very memory of it. She kept her face a mask of calm determination, but her mind reeled with the new information. She had to pivot her strategy. Exposing their economic model was one thing. Proving this monstrous secret would be another. She needed Vex to admit to something, anything, that would open the door to this new line of questioning. The first rule of cross-examination: never ask a question you don't already know the answer to. Prolocutor Vex Rostova said, her voice regaining its steady rhythm. Let us set aside the Illith for a moment. Let's return to the Olen'tath. You claim the tithe is for their benefit, that it fosters dignity. What happens if an Olen'tath, for reasons of health or conscience, is unable to meet their daily labor or energy quota? Vex seized the opportunity to shift the topic away from the damning historical evidence. The Chiton are compassionate, Captain. Allowances are made. Quotas can be deferred, often transferred to the community. It is a collective effort. The strong help the weak. It is another lesson we teach. This was their safe ground, the language of community and support. How thoughtful, Rostova replied, her words laced with sarcasm so subtle it was almost undetectable. But what if the community cannot cover the deficit? What happens to the individual then? Is the collar removed? Removal is not an option, Vex stated. The bond is sacred. If an individual is truly unable to contribute through labor or energy, the collar can be modified. It can draw directly from the wearer's biosignature. It is a painless subconscious process, a way for even the weakest to contribute their small part to the great work. There it was, the admission she needed. The legal and ethical door had just been thrown wide open. Biosignature, Rostova repeated the word, letting it hang in the air. You are claiming the right to draw energy directly from a sentient being's body, without their active consent as payment for a debt they never personally incurred. You are telling this quorum that you convert life into currency. The prolocutor seemed to realize its mistake. It had tried to portray the process as gentle, a last resort of compassion. But Rostova had reframed it in its brutal reality. It is a minuscule amount, Vex stammered, the melodic clicks becoming sharp and defensive. A symbolic contribution. It has no detrimental effect on the individual's health. Does it? Rostova countered, pressing the advantage. Solon display the mortality rates for the Olentath in the sectors where chitin technology has been most deeply integrated. Correlate it with instances of biosignature contribution. A new chart appeared. It showed a horrifying spike. In the most developed areas, life expectancy had plummeted by 30%. The official cause was always logged as natural causes, exhaustion, or malnutrition tragedies. The chitin would then use their technology to solve incurring more debt. It was a perfect self-perpetuating cycle of exploitation. They were not just harvesters. They were farmers, and they were cultivating death. Your compassion is a calculated part of the machine. The holograms of the quorum flickered. One of them, a being of pure energy called the Signian Ascendancy, spoke for the first time. Its voice was like the chiming of 1,000 glass bells. Prolocutor Vex. The evidence presented by the Terran mandate is disturbing. Your doctrine appears to be in direct violation of the sentient dignity accords. We require a full and immediate explanation. The pressure was mounting. Vex was being assailed from all sides. Its legal fortress was crumbling, and its reputation was in ashes. But Rostova knew this was not the end. The chitin empire was ancient and powerful. They would not surrender based on a single inquiry. They would sever ties, declare the process illegitimate, and retreat behind their borders, taking the Olentath with them. She needed to do more than win a legal argument. She needed to create a consequence so immediate and so profound that the chitin could not ignore it. She needed to enact mirror justice. Before the prolocutor answers, Rostova interjected, her voice ringing with authority. I ask the quorum to recognize another right guaranteed by the Galactic Compact. Article 9, Section 3, the right of restitution. When a signatory power is found to have extracted resources through illegal or unethical means, the aggrieved party has the right to an immediate and equivalent return. A hush fell over the inquiry. The right of restitution was an archaic law rarely invoked. It was considered too aggressive, too disruptive. But it was still on the books. Vex's head snapped towards Rostova, its multifaceted eyes burning with what could only be described as hatred. You would not dare. The economic chaos. It would destabilize the entire sector. It is you who have created the instability, prolocutor, Rostova replied, her calm finally breaking, to reveal the cold, hard fury beneath. You have built an empire on the backs of the helpless. You have twisted law into a weapon of oppression. You speak of compassion while your ledgers scream of predation. Today the ledger will be balanced. The bill for your benevolence is due. She turned to her command crew. Jian, Anya, Solon, it's time. This was the plan they had developed in secret. It was not enough to expose the truth. They had to make the truth have consequences. Using the Chitin's own detailed energy logs, the very evidence they had used to track the tithe Solon, had calculated the exact amount of energy stolen from the Olentath, down to the last jewel. And now they were going to give it back. Solon Rostova commanded, her voice echoing in the chamber. Open a channel to the Chitin's primary energy conduit for this system. Use their own network protocols. The access codes are in their public tithe declarations. Accessing. Solon replied, its calm, synthesized voice a chilling counterpoint to the unfolding drama. They use a distributed network. I will need to interface with every caller in the system to create a resonance cascade. On Olin Prime, the people felt a strange vibration. The collars around their necks, for so long a symbol of their debt, began to glow with a soft, white light. The ever-present hum of Chitin technology changed its pitch, rising to a new frequency. The drones, the factories, the orbital stations, all of it, was part of one vast, interconnected power grid. A grid designed to flow in only one direction. Solon was about to reverse it. Justice is not a plea. It is a reversal of power. Prolocutor Rostova said, her eyes locked on Vex. You have taught the Olentath about debt. A powerful lesson. Now we will teach you about repayment. With a final command from Rostova, Solon executed the maneuver. The Principia's own power core surged, not to fire a weapon, but to send a single targeted data spike into the Chitin network. It was not an attack. It was an invoice. The data spike triggered a system-wide reversal of the tithe protocol. Every caller, every factory, every drone that had been drawing power from the Olentath system began to push it back. The Chitin orbital station, where the meeting was taking place, shuddered violently. Lights flickered as power grids overloaded. Alarms began to blare. The energy being drained from the system was now being force-fed back to its source, using the Chitin's own infrastructure as the weapon. The bill was coming due not in credits, but in raw, unstoppable power. What have you done? Vex shrieked, its melodic voice gone, replaced by a raw, screeching panic. Its gilded form was thrown off balance as the station shook. We have delivered a receipt. Rostova answered, her hands gripping a console for stability. On the main screen, Solon displayed the energy transfer in real time. A torrent of light, a river of pure power flowing backwards along the well-worn paths of Chitin exploitation. The numbers on the Olentath debt ledger were spinning backwards, erasing millennia of servitude in a matter of minutes. Each jewel was a judgment. Each watt was a verdict. The quorum watched in stunned silence. This was unprecedented. The humans were not just arguing the law, they were enforcing it in real time on a systemic scale. They had turned the Chitin's greatest strength, their interconnected, all-encompassing network of control, into their greatest vulnerability. The mirror arrays of justice were reflecting the glare of truth back at its source, and the source was beginning to burn. The gilded plates of Prolocutor Vex's carapace rattled against each other as another shockwave tore through the station. Emergency lighting bathed the chamber in a hellish red glow, casting long, dancing shadows. The holograms of the quorum remained steady, their ancient, impassive faces, watching the Chitin representative's composure disintegrate. Control, once absolute, was now a memory. Vex's attempts to issue commands to its network were met with feedback screeches. Solon had not just opened the floodgates. It had seized control of the dam itself. This is an act of war, Vex keened, pointing a trembling, clawed limb at Rostova. A direct assault on a sovereign member of the Galactic Compact. The quorum must condemn this. This is not an assault, Prolocutor. It is an audit. Rostova corrected her voice, cutting through the cacophony of alarms. You pride yourselves on meticulous record-keeping. We are simply ensuring your books are balanced. Every jewel you took is being returned to its rightful owner. No more, no less. It is the very definition of mirror justice. On the main screen, the numbers continued to fly. The total energy debt, once an astronomical figure designed to be eternal, was plummeting towards zero. With every passing second, decades of a species' stolen life force were being returned. Rostova felt a grim satisfaction. This was a new kind of warfare, one fought with accounting, and an unbreakable adherence to principle. A ledger in the right hands is a more powerful weapon than a fleet, Solon Rostova said, raising her voice to be heard over the groaning of the station's superstructure. Now, show them the rest of the transaction. Show them what the energy was really for. Acknowledged, Captain. The AI's voice replied, serene amidst the chaos. The main screen split. On one side, the energy return continued. On the other, a new visualization bloomed. It was a complex, shimmering map of the kitten's collective consciousness, a vast, galactic-scale neural network. And flowing into it like polluted rivers into a sea were faint, multicolored streams. One of those streams originated from Olin Prime. The quorum asked for an explanation of your methods, Rostova announced, her voice resonating with cold fury. Here it is. The Chitin do not just drain worlds for power. They are consuming cultures. They are metabolizing the very life experience of sentient beings to fuel the expansion of their own minds. She gestured to the screen. That is not a tithe. It is cannibalism executed on a civilizational scale. The price of their wisdom was the sanity of others. The Cygnian Ascendancy's light shimmered with agitation. Is this true, Prolocutor Vex? Does your gratitude tithe serve as a conduit for psychic transference? Vex was trapped. The data was irrefutable, pulled from its own network's deepest logs. To deny it was to deny reality. Its gilded form seemed to shrink the bravado and condescension, replaced by a raw, venomous fury. You primitives would not understand. The great work requires sacrifice. We are preserving their essence, weaving it into a greater pattern. They are not destroyed, they are elevated into fuel. Rostova shot back. You are not weavers, you are parasites, and your pretty legal documents are just the anesthetic you use to dull the pain of your victims. The truth once spoken cannot be unheard. From her station, Anya Sharma watched her knuckles white. She had found the legal precedent, the single thread. She had never imagined it would unravel into a tapestry of such profound horror. This was not just a crime. It was a sin against the very concept of sentience. The alarms on the Chitin station suddenly fell silent. A new, deeper thrumming replaced them. Jian Li's head snapped up. Captain, he said, his voice tense. Multiple subspace ruptures detected. Chitin fleet. They're here. Outside the station's viewports, the blackness of space was torn open. A dozen Chitin warships, vast, golden, and insectoid, emerged into real space. They were sleek, predatory vessels, bristling with energy weapon emplacements. They moved to encircle the lone Terran mandate ship, the Principia. The legal argument was over. The military response had begun. Down on Olin Prime in the valley of moss-covered trees, the artisan felt the change. The collar around her neck for so long, a source of a quiet, draining hum, now pulsed with a gentle warmth. It felt familiar. A forgotten melody surfaced in her mind, a weaving song her grandmother had taught her. The colors of her loom seemed brighter, the air fresher. For the first time in her adult life, the fog of a debt she could never repay began to lift. She felt not just relief, but the return of a part of herself she hadn't even known was missing. Freedom was not an absence of chains, but the presence of self. On the bridge of the Principia, the mood was electric. Red alerts flashed across every console. Shields to maximum, Jian commanded, his voice a steady rock in the storm. Charge weapon capacitors, but do not lock targets. I want a full sensor scan of their fleet. Find me a weakness. There will be no firing. Commander Rostova said, her voice calm but absolute as she stepped onto the bridge. All eyes turned to her. Captain Jian protested, his face grim. They have us outgunned 12-1. Our only chance is a preemptive strike on their command ship. Our only chance, Rostova countered, her eyes never leaving the view screen, is to hold the line. Not a military line, but a legal one. We came here to teach a lesson about the law. We will not abandon it for the simplicity of violence. She turned to her command chair. Solon, are you in their fleet's communication system? Affirmative, Captain. Their network security is formidable, but it shares a root architecture with their civil administration network. Their obsession with integration is their weakness. A system's greatest strength is often its most fatal flaw. Good, Rostova said. She looked at the quorum whose holographic forms now also graced her bridge. They were the witnesses. They were the jury. Prolocutor Vex has been replaced by a military commander, I presume. Let's hear what they have to say. A channel opened. The face of a new chitin appeared on the main screen. This one was different from Vex. Its carapace was not gilded, but a flat, menacing black, scarred with the marks of old battles. This was Fleet Master Zethol. Terran vessel Principia. Zethol's translated voice boomed, devoid of Vex's melodic artifice. It was a sound of gravel and command. You have committed an act of unprovoked aggression against the chitin hegemony. Surrender your vessel and your crew for judgment, or we will destroy you. Rostova stood, her small human form facing the giant, intimidating alien on the screen. Fleet Master Zethol, my name is Captain Eva Rostova of the Terran Mandate. We have not committed an act of aggression. We have enforced a legal judgment ratified by a quorum of the Galactic Compact, which you can see as witnessing this exchange. Your prolocutor was found to be in violation of the Sentient Dignity Accords. The Compact's laws do not apply when our sovereignty is attacked, Zethol snarled. We are not bound by your interpretations. You are a signatory to the Compact, Rostova stated plainly. You are bound by its laws whether you find them convenient or not. And so are we. She took a breath. This was the moment. The final move. Which is why we will not fire upon your ships. We will stand here under the watchful eyes of the galactic community, and we will allow you to make a choice. She paused, letting her words sink in. You can open fire on a vessel that has not raised its weapons, a vessel that is acting as an agent of the Compact's own laws. You can declare war on a principle, or you can stand down and accept the judgment that has been rendered. A bluff is only a bluff if you are uncertain of your opponent's character. Sthol's mandibles clicked in a gesture of contempt. A noble speech. It will be your eulogy. You think your principles are a shield. No, Rostova said, a faint, sad smile on her lips. I think your records are a weapon. She turned to her AI. Solon. Executing the final contingency, Captain, the AI replied. On Zethol's command bridge, 1,000 alarms began to chime, but they were not alarms of system failure. They were information alerts. Across the chitin hegemony, on every single world they had helped, a data packet was being unlocked. It contained the complete unredacted ledgers of the gratitude tithe. It contained the proof of the energy harvesting. It contained the horrifying truth of the psychic consumption. And it was signed not by the Terran Mandate, but by the public record of the Olin Prime inquiry. Solon had not just seeded a network, it had planted 1 billion seeds of rebellion. "What is this?" Zethal hissed, watching reports flood his screen. Uprisings on Kitten Prime. Legal challenges being filed from 12 different species. Their entire empire of exploitation was being threatened with dissolution from within, brought on by the simple, undeniable weight of their own recorded truth. The empire was built on a lie, and the lie had just been called due. That Rostova said, her voice soft, but carrying the weight of a final judgment, is the cost of doing business your way. We are not your enemy, Fleet Master. Your own history is. If you open fire, my crew and I will die. But the truth will be out. Your empire will burn not from our weapons, but from the outrage of 1,000 worlds you have bled dry. Your choice. Destroy one ship or lose everything. The silence on the bridge of the Principia was absolute. Every officer held their breath. They watched the Khitan fleet waiting for the flash of weapon fire that would end them. Jianli's hand hovered over the tactical display, his pragmatism warring with his faith in his captain. Anya Sharma simply stared, witnessing the culmination of her legal discovery. This was law as a force of nature. Minutes stretched into an eternity. The Khitan ships hung in the void, silent and menacing. Then slowly, almost imperceptibly, the energy signatures from their weapon arrays began to power down. Zethal, the scarred warrior, had made a soldier's calculation. He had weighed the cost of victory against the price of defeat. He had chosen survival. The Cygnian ascendancy spoke its voice of chimes filling the bridge. Fleet Master Zethal, the quorum acknowledges your de-escalation. We find the Khitan hegemony guilty of gross violation of the Sentient Dignity Accords. The practice of perpetual debt servitude and biosignature harvesting is hereby condemned and outlawed. All existing tithe collars are to be deactivated and removed. This judgment will be entered into the Galactic Compact's public ledger. It is binding. Anya Sharma, at Rostova's nod, began typing furiously. She was drafting the text of the new precedent, the formal legal language that would turn this victory into a permanent part of galactic law. The Olin Prime Precedent, a firewall against predation, built from the ashes of the Khitan's greed. The victory was absolute, but it was not without its cost. The first report came from Olin Prime. With the Khitan network shut down, their advanced infrastructure from atmospheric processors to medical synthesizers had all gone offline. The Olin Tath were free, but they were now facing a societal collapse. The Terran mandate would have to provide aid, a long and costly process to help them rebuild on their own terms. Freedom had a price, and it was responsibility. The second cost was less immediate, but more personal. Rostova's name and the name of the Principia were now etched into the memory of the Khitan hegemony. They had not been destroyed, only diminished. They would nurse their grudge. They would wait. They would remember the humans who had used their own rules to tear down their house. The mandate had won the battle, but it had made a powerful, patient, and hateful enemy. On the bridge, Rostova watched as the Khitan warships one by one turned and vanished back into subspace. They did not offer a word of surrender or acknowledgement. They simply left. The void they left behind felt vast and quiet. "Take us home," Commander Rostova said, her voice heavy with the weight of the day. Janli nodded, a look of profound respect in his eyes. "Aye, Captain." The public ledger entry broadcast across the galaxy blinked, confirmed. Its light was crisp, cold, and final. Rostova stood alone on the observation deck, once more watching Olin Prime swim below. The faint shimmer of the collars was gone. The world looked somehow brighter, more alive. They had come here to confront an injustice, to fight a legal battle against an empire. They had won not by breaking the law, but by believing in it more than their enemy did. Justice, true justice, is not about punishment. It is about the restoration of balance. It is the simple cosmic accounting that ensures every debt is paid, every theft is returned, and every ledger in the end tells the truth. They had taught an empire the meaning of a true reckoning,